You may have heard that at our recent annual general meeting, we voted overwhelmingly to change our name from St. Peter's Church to Gracefields Church. I thought it would be helpful to explain some of the thinking behind this new name. Obviously, two parts to it. Firstly, the word grace. That's a reminder of how we are saved, how we continue to grow as Christians. It's a reminder of the message we need to share with the world and how we're called to treat others. Then the other part of the name, Fields, it's a connection with the fields where our building is, a well-known location in our valley. It suggests a collective, something fertile, something growing, something nourishing. And it's a New Testament image used for the church and associated with the church's mission. Let's take a look at one example of that from 1 Corinthians 3, reading from verse 5. Paul says this: "What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field." So, a few things this name can maybe remind us of. This name can remind us that we belong to God and exist for His glory. You see at the end of that passage in 1 Corinthians, a local church is referred to as God's field. That is hugely reassuring, to know that we belong to Him. And so He will therefore not neglect us. He will keep on protecting us. And because we belong to Him, He is the one who receives the glory. This also comes through in the famous parable of the sower. Remember the fourth soil, the good soil. The three soils come to nothing, but the fourth soil represents those who keep on going, listening to the word, persevering in the ministry of the word. And they produce a harvest 30, 60, 100 times what was sown. And the idea is that harvest is for God and for His glory. So there's the first thing this name can remind us of. We belong to God and we exist for His glory. Also, this name can remind us that we have been and only ever will be grown by God's grace. You see, the situation in Corinth was that factions had developed in the church. People had favorite apostles, favorite preachers. Paul reminds the church that no matter who was involved in preaching or teaching or leading, ultimately it was God who had given the growth. Such an important reminder for us today. It's so easy in our human pride to want to take the credit for things that God has done. But God is the one who has grown us. God continues to grow us in number and in maturity. He changes lives by His Holy Spirit as we teach His Spirit-inspired word. Now, one more thing this name can remind us of. It can remind us of the mission that God has given us. Again, in 1 Corinthians, as we've seen, God is the one who gives the growth, but you notice how people are described in that passage? As God's fellow workers. That is a remarkable thing, that the all-powerful God of the universe involves us in His mission. The idea also comes through in Jesus' teaching in Matthew 9. We read that when Jesus saw the crowds, He had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then He said to His disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into His harvest." Again, the passage has the image of fields that are ripe for harvest. It's a common biblical image. What does Jesus tell His disciples to do? Well, to pray, to ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest field. So this name can remind us of our role in God's mission. We can be reminded to keep on serving as God's fellow workers and keep on praying for His help in that mission. In short, in summary, there is a God who is growing churches all over the world. These churches are like fields that have been brought to life and grown by His grace and His grace alone. There are some of the reasons why we thought this was a good name for this church.